So you just got a brand new assault bike in your home gym and you're wondering about the best way to use it to develop your aerobic system. Now, one of the simplest and most effective ways you can do that is with OPEX Sustain cyclical intervals. Let's get a few definitions out of the way so you know exactly what I'm talking about. When I say OPEX Sustain, I'm referring to sustainable training that's using the aerobic energy system, i.e., you're using oxygen for fuel. And there are so many great health benefits and longevity benefits that come from aerobic training. When I refer to cyclical training, I'm talking about movements that happen in cycles. So something just like an assault bike or perhaps an assault air rower, where the movement is repetitive, easy, low barrier, and simple for you to execute. So let's discuss some of the reasons why cyclical work is beneficial. Number one, it is very simple to do. Just about anyone can jump on this bike and get an aerobic response from their training without having to worry about muscle endurance limitations or technique being a barrier to entry. Number two, you get great metrics. It's really easy to tell if you're actually making training sustainable because you can look at the screen and see your RPMs or calories per hour and have that data to reference. And then number three, it's a really great way to develop pacing skills. So your ability to think about doing work for a period of time and making sure that your pace throughout that is nice and consistent. Now, when it comes to executing your cyclical sustained training on the assault bike, there are a few key things to remember to make sure you're getting the correct dose from that training. Number one, we want to make sure that your pace stays really consistent. Let's say you're doing 30 minutes steady on the assault bike. Take a look at that screen and look at the RPMs and make sure you're holding steady RPMs across that 30 minutes, and that will make sure that you keep that training sustainable and you don't get into unsustainable territory. Number two, if you're doing intervals, maybe you have 2 sets of 10-minute pieces with a 10-minute rest in between. Track your score across those 2 pieces. In set number 1, in 10 minutes, you might do 88 calories. In set number 2, I want you to do 88 calories again, and we don't want to see a decline in number of calories across your intervals. Number 3, perhaps you're doing cyclical intervals and you're going for certain distances or calories. Maybe you're doing 5 sets of 20 calories on, 2 minutes rest. Every one of those intervals should be executed for the same amount of time. So if it takes you 1 minute and 45 seconds to hit 20 calories on set 1, then set 5 should be the same, consistent times across. Finally, think about the pace that you're doing on the bike for being something that you could maintain for 4 times the distance or duration of the work you're doing. If you're on that bike for 5 minutes, think about doing a 20-minute race pace. So the pace that you could sustain for a 20-minute hard effort, but for 5-minute intervals. Now, it's time to get to work. My workout on the assault bike today is going to be 2 minutes and 30-second intervals with 2 minutes and 30 seconds rest. So I'm gonna do that 4 times through. I'm gonna remember to keep a sustained pace. Wish me luck. Now, right now, I'm holding 57 RPM on the assault bike, and I'm gonna maintain that for all 4 intervals. The reason why 57 is because for my 10-minute max cals on the assault bike, my average RPM is 57. So right now, I'm taking my 2 minutes and 30 seconds rest. And the reason that I've chosen 2:30 as my rest time is that, as a rule of thumb, when you're doing aerobic intervals, your work and rest periods should match. Now, on to set number 4. For my first 3 sets, I've been able to maintain 30 calories for each 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so I better make sure I hit that on number 4. As you can see, I worked hard, but it wasn't at an unsustainable pace, and I'm not laying on the floor in a puddle of sweat, absolutely exhausted. Instead, I worked at a rate that was sustainable across all 4 intervals. If I wanted to, I probably could have held a conversation in my rest periods, and I feel really good and like I could come back to this gym and do this session again tomorrow if I wanted to. Now, I've done some shorter aerobic intervals today, but aerobic development actually starts on the other end of the spectrum with longer, slower work. And the thing that I love about starting with slow 30 or 60-minute intervals and progressing down over time is the fact that it teaches you repeatability, pacing skills, and lets you develop a really big aerobic base that you can then build upon with shorter, higher powered work. So let's look at a 12-week progression. You could start with 15 minutes, work down to 10 minutes, work down to 5 minutes, and as those durations are decreasing, you'll begin to increase your pace. So maybe you start at 50 RPMs, move to 54, and end up at 56 RPMs as your aerobic ability improves and those intervals start to decrease in duration. Now, as you go to do OPEX sustained cyclical work on your assault bike for your at-home training, remember that the golden rule is sustainability. Keep a repeatable pace and you'll do great.